Good morning. Hopefully, everyone had a wonderful weekend. It's time for Pre-Market Pulsescan with yours truly, the Algo Capitalist, aka the Vulcan, coming to you live from postwaytrading.com, home of the world famous Postway Price Trigger reports. Now, you may not be able to see this quote thing going right now, but we're just going to go over it real quick. Here's what happened in the overnight markets. So the US dollar is up 24 pips at 96.86 handle. So dropping from the 97.42 overnight high. Bitcoin futures right now are down, um, let's call it 80, down 80, trading at 38,860. That's 38,860. We did touch down to 37,165 in the overnight. Ethereum futures are down 37. We did get down to 2571 and a half. That's $2,571.50. Dow futures are currently down 426 points at 33,580. The market did dip down to 33,321 in the overnight and actually got up as high as 33,799. E-mini S&P 500 futures are down 52 and 3/4 points. We did touch a low of 42.56 and a quarter. Now the market has rallied to 43.26 and 3/4, not too far away from the overnight high of 43.43 and a half. It should also be noted that the Dow futures put in a bearish 2-bar Charlie this morning, which means we can expect an all-day down day in the Dow. 9 times out of 10, if you have a bearish pre-market 2-bar Charlie condition, you will definitely have an all-day down day. Likewise for a bullish one. The E-mini NASDAQ 100 is down 140 and a half points. It got as low as 13,691 in the overnight and topped out at 14,069 and a half. Currently, it's trading at 14,042 and a quarter, not too far away from the overnight highs. The Russell My Hustle is down 20.7 points, trading at 2,018.4. The market, and that's exactly where it opened at, by the way. That's where it opened. The overnight high is at 2027. The market did touch down to a low of 1971.4. Now, the real story here is the crude oil futures. WTI crude oil, light sweet crude. It got down to $93.04 a barrel. That's exactly where it opened, and that's also the low. So that gives us a bullish 2-bar Charlie on the day. Currently, the market's up $3.47 at $95.06. The market did briefly rally to a high of $99.13. It should be noted here that $99.13 would justify and qualify as a failed rally because it did not continue from Friday's market high. I'm sorry, it wasn't Friday, it was Thursday. Thursday's high of $100.52 per barrel. So you're well off of those highs. All right, nat gas right now is trading at $4.47, and it did hit a high of 468 in the overnight and a low of 445. So it's right near those lows. Another interesting one today is gold futures up $28.10, trading at $1,915.60 per ounce. The market did dip below that 1900 psychological support briefly in the overnight market, dropping down to $1,895.50 per ounce. All right, now here is silver. Silver is up 53 cents, trading at $24.55 per ounce. The market did rally to $24.87 in the overnight market. but it also dipped down to $24.16. Another big story is what's happening in the grain markets. Ladies and gentlemen, this is now borderline frightening. Soybeans are up 33 and a half, trading at 16.16 a bushel. That's a lot, man. $16 a bushel. The overnight low was 16.03 and 3/4. The market did rally up to a high of 16.46 and a quarter in the overnight market. Corn up 24. Make that 25 right now at 680 and a half. The overnight low is 668 and 3/4, and 688 and a half is the current high this morning. That's where the market's trading. Wheat, on the other hand, is up another 42.6 points at 902.37. It did hit 934 and 3/4 in the overnight high, and the overnight low was 894 and 3/4. The bond futures, all right, the long bond is up a full 1 point plus 23 seconds. So almost 1 1/4. It's trading at 155 and 23 seconds. It did briefly touch a low of 154 and 31 seconds, and the overnight high was 156 and 28 seconds. The euro currency right now is off 49 pips at 112.19. This is the micro euro futures. The overnight low was 111.48. Ouch. Overnight high 112.38. So we're off those highs, but not by much, and well off the lows of the session. The British pound micro futures are down 11 pips at 133.99. It did drop to a low of 133.32, and the overnight high is 134.15, and the market is just slightly off of those overnight highs. Last but not least, the Australian currency, the Aussie dollar, is currently unchanged at 72.32. Overnight low was 71.69, and the overnight high is 72.39. So only a few pips off of those highs. Very interesting developments thus far. As you know, the United States and Europe have targeted Russia's financial system by kicking them out of SWIFT, trying to make things difficult for them, trying to drive them into bankruptcy. And as you know, Putin doesn't care. Vladimir Putin couldn't give two cares about what they're doing. They just don't care. How do you handle, what do you do when a nation doesn't care about your threats? They don't care if they're real threats or empty threats. They just don't care. Russia is saying, bite me. I don't care. Do what you do, and we're going to do what we do. So where does that leave Europe and the United States of America? Europe is way more dependent on Russian oil and nat gas than the U.S. is. So this is really going to cripple the European economy, not necessarily the United States. United States is already hurting and having other issues to deal with. So war only makes sense because war is what? A racket. So they need something big to happen so they can keep this cooking. That's how that works, okay? So it makes you wonder, where does the world go from here? Those are fair questions. Those are really good questions. And the short answer is we don't know. From a socioeconomic standpoint, we can only look at, the fundamentals and what's being said. On the market side of things, we got that on lock. So we're not really tripping off of that per se, because we have the pulse wave, so we know what to do, how to position ourselves in these markets, what to do and what not to do. So we're not really tripping off of that. So coming into today, you have your pulse wave reports, you got your marching orders, you know how things are looking. So let's just briefly review what happened here when you got your reports and you saw them yesterday. Let's just briefly take a look at how the markets ended, because it's very important to note, especially on the crypto side, since it's Friday extends until Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard New York time. So let's just have a brief look at how the markets fared last week and what it means going forward this week, despite what happened in the overnight markets, despite what you may see on your quote boards this morning. We're going to see if all of that is just noise and irrelevant, or does it mean something more? So let's take a look here on what you can expect out of this week's trading. All right, so we're going to look at these weekly charts. First of all, we're going to look at the US dollar. So yesterday when you got your pulse wave reports, when you logged into your dashboard, you noticed that we expected a continuation pattern for the dollar because of how it closed on Friday. It gave us a bullish pointer, and we have increasing bullish momentum. You see the green line extending out. That's picking up a lot of bullish sentiment in the market, okay? And what do we know? Well, we know that coming into things this morning, that the market is moving in tandem with what we actually believe the market to do. It's trying to hold on to some of these continuation gains. It's only up 16 pips. It was up a lot more. I think the market's just retracing from the overnight markets to try to determine where it wants to go from here, which is quite fair. We expected as much. All right, let's take a look at some other things real quick. Okay, so let me fix my screen. Okay. All right. So the next one we got here is the wheat. All right, this is what wheat did on Friday. What do we have here? A new weekly high followed by a major bullish pointer. All right, so as we speak, what is wheat doing? Wheat is continuing the rally from this bar here. We haven't taken it out yet, but it is bullish nonetheless. We know this bullish pointer at some point will be taken out. We think it will happen sooner rather than later, so we think that will happen this week. Taking a look at your Bitcoin futures, you can see, what did the market do on Friday? Well, we have this bearish pointer, right? And already this morning, Bitcoin now is positive by about 300 points, but it was down. I think it was down like 1,500 at some point. So we see the continuation here. The bears are still very much in control of this market. We'll see if they can hold on to their grasp, because right now we are in the red zone in Bitcoin. Taking a look at the gold futures, well, we already went over what they did this morning. They're kind of popping this morning. And this is an interesting one, right? Because coming into today, we had a secondary crash alert that was made on Friday as the market closed the lows of the session, putting the $1,800 trend line support in play. But today, so far, as we talked about earlier, gold right now currently is at 1917, up 30. So it's trying to do a little something. Now, even though this is a secondary, crash alert warning on the weekly, It is also a bullish pointer nonetheless, which is very interesting. We got a bullish pointer. So we know that all this means, probably more than likely, is that the market is just expanding its trading range. What does that mean? Well, if you go back to the week of August the 13th of 2021, what do we see? Well, we have a bearish pointer, which has never been reconciled or even tested. Then we have the bullish pointer contrasted with this bearish pointer, and that tells you that the trading range now has expanded. Instead of the market truly breaking out and starting to trend again, it's just expanding its range. So the support for the range is at 1,692.60. The resistance for the range is at 1,972.50. All right. So this is where we are right now. That's quite the trading range. But is it really? Not when you take a look at how the markets have been behaving inside of the consolidation zones. The last major one that we were under was this one here, made on the week of June the 18th, 2021. The market stayed within it for the remainder of the year. All right, and now here we are. So just putting things into perspective for you this morning in this pre-market update. All right, taking a look at our Illuminati index. So the Illuminati index put in a secondary rally alert on Friday, all right, because the market rallied into the close, all right, even though it's in the Kumo cloud, overhead trendline resistance is definitely in play. And this morning, what did we see? Hack is up, right? All right, next up we got let's see. Let's take a look at the oil. The oil has been crazy. It's been all over the place. Let's see what we got. Okay, so for the last several weeks, we've been hitting new highs every week. But then Friday did something. Friday put in a bullish pointer, but it's also a continuation pattern of selling pressure starting to come into the market. All right, you cross into the red zone. Even though you have this bullishness piped in, it's still in the red zone. So we think that rallies will continue to be faded. It's buy the rumor, sell the news, or buy the rumor, sell the facts, however you want to say it. And that's kind of what's been going on so far. Even though oil is up, or sorry, it was up in the pre-market, the market's open now because it's past 9:30 now. But what you have here is, oil trying to maintain. It's having a problem with closes above $95. Okay, having a major problem with that. 95 seems to be a major resistance point on the daily charts for the crude oil. All right, what else we got here? Let's look at the bonds coming into this week. What can we expect from bonds? Well, as you can see here, the bonds continued in a bearish stance on Friday. This is ticker TLT, all right? And looking at the current market conditions, it seems to be up about $1.50, trading at around, what's that, 138.39. So you're still within the range of last week's bar, all right? So you haven't done anything spectacular. You're just kind of sideways, and really an inside week so far as to start things off. But the bears still have it for now in your bond. So that's pretty much what's happening today, ladies and gentlemen. I know that there are going to be Fed minutes this week. I think Tuesday and Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see what they are saying about that. There's a lot that is just in the air. It's up for grabs right now. Things can go either way. There was a big news report over the weekend that Russia was building up their nuclear position in the Ukraine, because the Ukraine was like we're prepared to use nukes. We don't care. We will use the nuke. We'll do whatever we have to do. So the European and American stance is, hey, let's just hurt them financially, and then that way we'll be in the clear. They're thinking they can just hurt them financially, but Russia is pretty resilient. What the Americans in Europe were trying to accomplish is to create panic in their financial system and cause a run on Russian banks. Okay, that's what they want. The end game is to create to force Russia into a banking holiday, a banking crisis, by way of causing a run on the banks. Okay, so we have a lot of things going on right now. Okay, we're moving toward that one world government. We're moving toward that one world currency. And then to top it off, we'll have the one world religion. Okay. That is something to keep in mind and think about as we are moving forward and as the news continues to come out. All right. It's just something to think about. And this is the way to really think about it. Okay. Whenever you're operating in our current reality, you're dealing with trade-offs. Okay. Trade-offs. There's really not necessarily a cure for certain things or really a solution. When we say cure, it means solution. It's really not a solution. Okay. It's just a trade-off. All right. I think the great Tom Sowell talked about that in many of his economic books. He was just talking about trade-offs. Okay. You have trade-offs. There's really no solution per se. Some problems, some issues are just so complex and have so many underlying currents behind them that it's almost impossible to come up with a one-size-fits-all solution. So all you really have at the end of the day are trade-offs. Would you rather this or would you rather that? And then once you've made your decision, you have to live with it. You have to suffer the consequences of those decisions, even if your decisions are between bad and worse. You still have to make a decision. All right. So moving forward, okay, so the unintended consequences come into play because for every action has an equal reaction, right? That's just physics. So when we look at it that way, which is a smart way to look at things, we have to say, okay, do we have any kind of an inkling, any kind of idea what some of the unintended consequences will be, or the collateral damage? Can we ascertain some type of way what the collateral damage will be, and can we minimize the collateral damage? Okay, something to think about. Something to think about. So, what are some of the collateral damage? Well, when you are at war with a nation, you're not at war with the dirt and the soil. Nations are made up of individuals. There are all types of individuals that make up a nation. Okay. A nation is made up of people. Okay. So it's the people that suffer based on the decisions of their government. So because Russia decided to attack, to invade the Ukraine, the collateral damage now are Russia's citizens who may not be pro-war. Some may not be, but the ones that are not for war, those that disagree with their government, nevertheless now must suffer because of their government. So they didn't vote to go to war. They had no say. Both rich and poor alike will now have to suffer. When it comes to anything financial situations hurt more for the poor than they do for the elite. The elite have some staying power. All right. They got some staying power. But a poor man has no, and I mean no staying power. Okay. It is what it is. Okay. It is what it is. So you can now expect hardship, financial hardship on the Russian citizens as a result of their government going to war. Not only that, but what about the innocent Ukrainians? They didn't vote to go to war with Russia. They would have preferred if Russia didn't enter their country at all. They would have preferred to just be left alone. They would have preferred for these things not to happen. So now, as part of the collateral damage, you have innocent civilians, both rich and poor alike, that are being killed with all the mortar rounds and bombings. They don't like to talk about the people who they are hurting, the people who they are killing with their bombs and with their bullets. And because we know that America is the #1 exporter of weapons, a question has to come up: how many mortar rounds and bombs that have exploded, killing innocent civilians, came out of the U.S.? Another unintended consequence, or should I say collateral damage? This is more collateral damage, not unintended. This is collateral damage. What about the fact that Russia removed Ukrainians' dam that they built to cut off water from Crimea? What's up with that? Things that you have to put into perspective. So they got kicked out of SWIFT. Okay? Kicked out of SWIFT. So the question may come up, what is SWIFT? And how is it so powerful that they could use it to do this? What is it about? What does it all mean? Well, let's take a quick look at that. So what is the SWIFT global system? Well, we know that the U.S. and its allies banned Russia from the SWIFT system. The nation stated in a joint statement that the sanctions, which include restrictions on the Russian central bank's international reserves, it will be imposed on them, and they're going to strengthen that and make it hurt even more. So your SWIFT global system, okay, is something that is controlled by the central banks. All right. So I talked about this before when we were talking about Venezuela and Argentina with the economic collapse that they were having at that time. And basically what it is it freezes all of your offshore assets. So any American assets that Russia has is now frozen. They don't have access to it. They have been denied access to their money. And they call that a sanction. All right. They're going to hold on to their money as a sanction. But here's the thing, though. Russia can do the same thing with American interests in Russia. So who's really being hurt here? It's the innocent businessmen and women who do business in both of these foreign countries. So anyone in Russia who has anything going on here is going to be frozen. And any Americans that got business interests going on in Russia, too bad, your money is frozen. That's one of the biggest financial risks that you face if you try to do business in a foreign country. The foreign country can seize your assets. They can freeze or seize your assets, and there's nothing you can do about it. You dig what I'm saying? So that's one of the risks in doing that. Now, we already saw how the U.S. deleted Chinese stocks from its stock exchanges. All right. They banned them all together and said, nope, we're delisting these. Nope, you can't trade them here anymore. Likewise, China has done the same thing with America. See, because of this global system, whenever you do something in the financial arena, it doesn't just hurt the person you're targeting, it hurts everybody else as well. All right. So there really isn't any unintended consequences when we're talking about war. It's just reality. What do you mean you didn't expect any civilians to be hurt? You bombed a hospital. Hospitals are full of sick and injured people. And then you drop a bomb on the hospital. What do you mean you didn't expect for those casualties? What did you think was going to happen when you blew up the hospital? What did you think was going to happen when you landed bombs in a civilian neighborhood full of houses? Are you trying to say you didn't know those homes were there? You didn't see the gated community? You didn't see the apartment complex? For real? Is that what you want us to believe? You want us to believe that your international intelligence agencies didn't know where to and where not to bomb? Really? I don't think so. Lies, lies, and darn lies. That's what we're dealing with, ladies and gentlemen. Lies. So this should just show you the power of the central banks. And this is why the U.S. wanted a central bank in every developed country. All right. Now, looking at these so-called sanctions, well, we know that the U.S. Treasury has targeted nearly 80% of all banking assets in Russia. All right. Now, the SBER Bank, well, it owns about 1/3 of the assets of banks in Russia. And we know that sanctions were imposed on it by forcing U.S. banks to sever their correspondent banking ties with SBER Bank and also VTB Bank. All right. So this is what they have done. All right. And they've done it in hopes to make it painful for Putin to move around and do what he needs to do. But here's where it has failed. It's failed because you don't know where all of his money is. You have no idea where they may have working capital. So and that's another thing too. They don't need to transact in dollars. They can transact in other currencies. Okay. This is why they wanted central banks in Iran and China and Russia for this purpose. Who controls what the central banks do? You got to think about that. Who controls them? Because the central banks, at the end of the day, they don't belong to the government. They're private entities. The Federal Reserve controls these central banks, and it too is a private entity. It is not part of the U.S. government. It is not a government agency. It is a private agency. You can never lose sight of that and forget that. So that's where we are right now. Okay. I think it's going to continue to be a mess until a resolution is done. I did warn you that I believe that 2022 is going to be the foundation of war. And that's exactly has happened. Okay. That's what's up. So where do we go from here? Tough to say. Because right now, they're trying to say that, you know, finger pointing. Everyone's at fault. But let's take a quick look at what Putin has done. Well, he ordered a deterrence force to be put on high alert. That we do know. Okay. Why? Because Ukraine is now shifting to violate the UN Convention on certain conventional weapons as Russia advances, requiring Moscow to escalate its deterrence forces. Well, what do you expect them to do? If you're a country and you're being invaded by someone, there's no rules to how you're supposed to defend yourself and protect yourself. You're going to use whatever weapons you have at your disposal. It's called self-defense. So Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered his defense ministry to put the country's deterrence forces on high alert in light of the rising tensions in Ukraine following the special military operation in Donbass. Again, what did you expect? You just can't run up in your neighbor's house armed and not expect your neighbor to put you down. Quote from Mr. Putin, I order the Minister of Defense and the Chief of the General Staff to put the deterrence forces of the Russian army into a special mode of combat duty, Putin said in a meeting with the officials responsible for the defense bodies. Now, Putin, during a meeting with his defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, and General Staff Chief Valery Germasinov, they accused NATO of stepping up its aggressive rhetoric against Moscow, going beyond what he called the illegitimate economic sanctions. Well, when we talk about defense ministry, the Ukrainian military actions violate UN convention per se. Now, the Ukrainian armed forces are escalating their actions against the Russian armed forces as Kyiv began mass using phosphorus-filled ammunition, whose use is prohibited under international law in a bid to curb the advance of the Russian forces in Kiev near Ukraine's Hostomel airfield. Russian Defense Ministry spokesperson Major General Igor Konashkanov said on Sunday. Now, the Ukrainian Armed Forces unit, in a desperate attempt to hold back the advance of the Russian troops, have picked up on the mass use of phosphorus ammunition in Kiev suburbs near the Hostomel airfield. Now, the Russian official were told this in a briefing. They use 112 millimeter shells for D-30 howitzers and rockets for Soviet-made BM-21 Grad systems. Now, this is not the first instance of Ukraine's attempting to kill their own, as Kiev ships attack Russian naval vessels transporting surrendered Ukrainian border guards via U.S. UAVs. Moscow's defense ministry spokesperson Major General Igor Konashkanov said on Saturday. They also stressed that the use of these munitions is prohibited under the third protocol of the 1980 United Nations Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons. Ukrainian nationalist units have also killed 4 soldiers from Kiev armed forces. And you got to think for a minute. Why would you do that? Just to keep them from retreating as Moscow advances through the Ukraine. Now, I understand that desertion is punishable by death in pretty much every military around the world. So you can't really use that. You know what I mean? Now, Russia launched a special operation to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine on this past Thursday in response to requests from the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic for assistance in combating Ukrainian troops' aggression. Now, Russia had for months been warning of the threat posed against it by NATO's attempts to expand eastward, which happened simultaneously with an increase in NATO military activity along Russia's borders and batches of lethal weapons being sent to Ukraine, prompting Russia to request security guarantees from the West. And of course, Washington failed to provide the guarantees. Now, after the West did not respond to Russia's demands, and amid Ukrainian shelling on the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic, President Vladimir Putin initiated a special military operation in Donbas. So, this is another good example of the United States and its allies sticking their nose in places where it does not belong. And then trying to say you're violating NATO. So let me get this straight. Again, an armed man runs up into your home, but you're not supposed to defend yourself with any means necessary and with every weapon at your disposal. You're not supposed to do that. Really? Well, I don't know about you, but that's just not intelligent. That's not intelligent. I'm sorry. You have to defend yourself. This is beef between Ukraine and Russia. Russia saying you need to come home, and Ukraine is saying I don't want to come home. I'm grown. I'm on my own. That's really what it's about. So, where do they go from here? Your guess is as good as mine. Okay, but you do need to think about it. Who can take the moral high ground in this situation? I would argue to say no one, because every nation on earth is guilty of dirt of their own. However, it is my opinion that no one has done more dirt than the US of A. All right. So let's look at some facts about the unintended consequences. Now, we looked at the collateral damage, but now let's take a look at the unintended consequences of this war. Well, it's gas, oil, and aluminum prices skyrocketing because of this. All right. Just as the military situation between Russia and Ukraine escalates, so do commodity prices, which is interesting because the dollar has been so strong. Usually that puts pressure on commodity prices, but we're seeing them rally together. So European gas prices are already up 35% as the Ukraine crisis escalates into military confrontation. Now, while Russia supplies Europe with about 40% of its gas, the old continent is vulnerable to the consequences, there's that word again, consequences of the conflict, which they themselves, NATO members, have been participating in. NATO is not innocent. NATO has been expanding, and they've been expanding into disputed territory. All right? Just because I ran home real quick on my bicycle and I laid my bicycle down in my front lawn and ran in the house doesn't mean you get to then come and say, "Oh, I found a bicycle. It was just laying here. No one's around," and you pick it up and you ride off with my bicycle. That's theft, because not only was it on my property, but it belongs to me. You did not purchase it, nor was it given to you as a gift. Therefore, you have now stolen it. And that's how Russia was viewing this entire situation. He's saying, NATO, you are expanding into territories that do not belong to you. Okay. Now, while there were plans that Qatar would provide natural gas to Europe, even at the expense of already providing customers in Asia. The oil-rich producer does not have a surplus and could not fill in the supply gap. In parallel, some major oil importers have been pressuring OPEC Plus to pump faster and to pressure Saudi Arabia, among others, to provide the much needed energy to Europe. However, Qatar and Saudi Arabia are allied with both Washington and, you guessed it, Moscow. Yes, Qatar and Saudi Arabia are in bed with Washington and Moscow. Nevertheless, despite both having U.S. military bases, the relationship with Russia has grown substantially over the years. Remember, we talked about this. Remember the three amigos, Russia, China, and Iran? Something to think about. Now, Saudi Arabia sees great value in keeping Russia as a partner in OPEC, but during the gas summit in Doha, Qatar contended that much of the record gas prices in Europe is primarily due to its lack of investment in Gulf gas before the Ukraine crisis started. Qatar has been demanding supply contracts for 25 years. They have been begging you and pleading and encouraging you to enter into these contracts for the past 25 years. But Europe has failed to do so. Aluminum or aluminum, however you want to pronounce it, prices, in addition, have hit a record high price just after the launching of the attack. Prices jumped as high as $3,382.50 per ton, breaking the previous record of $3,380.15, which was reached in July of 2008 during the worldwide financial crisis. Notice how it's being called the worldwide financial crisis, not the U.S. financial crisis. Why is that? Because the world is connected through investment. Everybody invests in each other's country. Russia produces about 6% of the world's aluminum. Meanwhile, oil prices are all over the place. So the longer this goes on, the more volatility you will see in said markets. And when volatility increases, it makes it a little difficult for people to hold on. So just something to think about moving forward. You're going to need the pulse waves now more than ever because it's not going to end anytime soon. Russia is determined to have it their way, and it is what it is. So with that being said, I conclude this morning's pre-market Pulsescan report. Hopefully everyone will have a wonderful trading session, and I will see you guys in the trading room. I'm out. Smash that like button. Remember, bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered. So remember to take what you can and give nothing back. What that simply means is take whatever profit you can extract from the financial markets without giving it all back in form of losses. Never turn winning trades into losing trades. All right. Peace.